Thank you for joining me here today. Not a great venue, the Smokers Lounge. Try and ignore the smoke catching in your throat, and don't think about your delicate pink lung tissue soaking it all in. And you're right, our kids shouldn't be in here with us. But we're here to ask one simple question. What is a lethal dose of plastics poisoning? See, today we know a great deal about passive smoking. That's why we don't light up with our kids in the car anymore, the way the way our parents did when we were little. And you and I, we can walk away from the smoker's corner. But when it comes to breathable plastics pollution, we can't see it, we can't smell it, we can't taste it. Some of us don't even know that it's there, but it's pretty much everywhere. The evidence is showing that airborne microplastics are pretty much everywhere. We're turning the entire planet into a smoker's lounge. A smoker's lounge that none of us can leave, not even our kids. So I'm a science writer and a journalist, and I used to describe myself as someone who writes about climate change and food security and plastics and such. And then I realized that what I actually write about is pollution, carbon pollution of the atmosphere that's driving climate collapse, food-like products that are polluting our bodies with the oil spills of diabetes and heart disease and these so-called self-inflicted cancers. And then, of course, plastics, which are now milling down into such tiny particles that they're even washing up inside our bodies, like toxic sludge on a beach. Mostly, I'm interested with who profits from being able to pollute and who pays the price. So a few weeks ago, I was in the checkout queue at one of our very well-known national supermarkets. And it was just at the time when the United Nations attempt to bring about a global plastics treaty failed. And it was really simple. The world came together in Switzerland with the idea that they would finally wrap up a strong agreement that would put an end to the plastics pollution problem finally. The thinking was really simple. If we've left the tap open and flooded the floor, do we deal with the problem by continually mopping up the water, or do we simply close the tap? Over half of the countries that met in Switzerland wanted to turn off the tap. They wanted a treaty that would dramatically reduce the production of virgin plastics, and they also wanted a ban on many of the toxic chemicals that are baked into plastics DNA. But a few petrostates wouldn't let this happen. Hashtag Russia, hashtag Saudi Arabia, hashtag one or two others. So it's business as usual. The polluters keep polluting, while you and I have to keep mopping up the mess. And while we're doing so, we're running an uncontrolled experiment, one that we didn't consent to, where our bodies are the lab rats. We are getting exposed to the toxic chemicals in these plastics that we know will one day reveal the lethal dose value. So I'm stewing over this in the queue, and I notice on the wall above me an outsized poster in very stylish, muted fonts of beige and cream and ivory. It says, reduce, reuse, recycle. And yet all around us in the store, it's just an ocean of single-use plastics. All manner of content, cosmetics, sugary treats, trinkets, more cosmetics. Most of it is packaged in material that is indestructible and will only be used once. The contents won't last us very long, but the packaging will outlive all of us. Some of it will fossilize in a landfill somewhere, a municipal landfill. Some of it will get burned. Much of it will end up as pollution in the environment, where it will join the almost 6 billion metric tons that has been put out into the environment and accumulated around us in the last 70 years, some of which is now slopping around inside our bodies. Because the truth is, plastics never break down. They seem to disappear, but really they just grind down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces so we can't see it anymore and we forget it's there. But it's everywhere. It's in the food we eat, it's in our water, and it's even in the air we breathe. It's now turning up in our livers and our kidneys, in our placental tissue, in our breast milk, in our testes. It's in our blood, our bone marrow. It's in our hearts and our arteries. It's now so tiny, these microplastics have been able to slip through our body's most sophisticated defense, the blood-brain barrier. As with any poison, how dangerous it is depends on the dose. And the dose in this case depends on what kinds of plastics are in our bodies, which organs they're lodged in, how long they stay there, and how efficient our body is at flushing them away. Lots and lots of question marks. So, back in that queue, I have 2 items, pop them down on the counter, a chips and chocolate combo, and the guy serving me breaks into a dazzling grin. If you buy these, he says, pointing at the items, you get a free single-use plastic bottle. Actually, what he says is, I can get a free cool drink as part of a promotion. But what he doesn't realize he's saying is that I can, in fact, get a free single-use plastic bottle as part of the promotion. Because here's the economics behind this promotion. The retailers, manufacturers, producers, they're not just making money on the content of the bottle, they are making money on the bottle itself. So it's in their best interest to move as much stock as possible. This promotion is at odds with what the store was asking us to do. They're asking us to be good citizens to reduce, reuse, recycle. Yet at the same time, they're pushing us to do the exact opposite. Consume, consume, consume. The good news, it's not entirely our fault that the plastics pollution problem is that bad. The bad news, those whose fault it is are going to keep telling us that it's our fault. So this is straight from the food industry's propaganda playbook. Tell us that we are heavy and sick, it's our fault, because we are lazy and greedy. The food industry floods the market with food-like products that are designed to be addictive. They are engineered to bypass the off switch in our brains so that we binge eat. And yet they tell us we can't stop eating these foods, these faux foods, because we lack a moral spine. It was in that supermarket queue that an aha moment happened, because this isn't just about the single-use plastic bottle or whatever fizzy drink takes your fancy that happens to be in it, both of which are giving profits to the profit makers. This is about a script that has played itself out through history. Whenever profit is at stake, corporates or those profiting from the system will try and shift the blame away from themselves. We saw it with the slave trade. Different commodity, same corporate interests. Back in the days when the abolitionists were calling to an end to the trade in black bodies as units of labor, the activists were often called hypocrites. They were dismissed as hypocrites because they probably wore clothes that were made from cotton picked by enslaved people, which is true. In fact, anyone wearing clothes back then didn't have much of a choice, because until the garment industry made the decision to source ethically grown cotton, harvested by free people who were earning a living wage, everyone had blood on their hands. In order to change this, the profit-making garment industry and governments had to act first and bring about the end of the slave economy, even though it would hurt the bottom line. There are no shortage of solutions for dealing with today's pollution crises, whether we're talking carbon, faux foods, or plastics. But one of the biggest myths that we need to break is this one: the idea that we can solve these problems if a few well-meaning individuals commit to a meat-free Monday or to recycle their kitchen waste or to grow some veggies in the backyard. To bring about meaningful change, we need the big players to step up, those with the most power to bring about change fast and at scale, to really leverage their power to bring about a system that realizes our shared constitutional right to a healthy and safe environment. So here's what we can do in order to make this happen. 1, knock down the doors to Parliament. Make sure that we have regulations in place that make the polluters pay. The Extended Producer Responsibility Framework is a tested, proven vehicle for making this happen. It internalizes the cost of pollution. It simply becomes too expensive to keep polluting. But we know that industry won't like this. We saw it with the proposed tax on sugary drinks and with the plastic bag levy. Industry lobbied government hard and got watered down regulations. And the argument is rinse and repeat. These kinds of taxes will bring about job losses and harm the economy. This argument is intellectually lazy and it's morally indefensible because it ignores the fact that we are already paying a very high price for this pollution. But it's a price covered or carried by you and me, not by the profit makers. 2, be the change. Support the organizations that are already doing the work. They have the momentum, the theory of change, the networks. With a simple membership fee or regular donations, they can do the work on our behalf without us even having to leave the comfort of our armchair activism. 3, let's hit them where it hurts, with their reputations and in their pockets. We saw how sanctions and boycotts helped make South Africa, apartheid South Africa, an economically wounded pariah state. If we have money to invest, those of us who are lucky enough to have that, we can move our money to sectors and corporations who are showing a real commitment to the kind of circular economy that values breathable air, drinkable water, and abundant soils ahead of more loot in the already overstuffed pockets of a wealthy, powerful few. And number 4 is support independent journalism. Journalism is a load-bearing wall in a healthy democracy, but our industry is suffering and facing grave existential threats, particularly as we lose revenue to the tech oligarchs in AI and social media. Journalism's job isn't just to keep an eye on government, but on any individual or institution that has an outsized power to rig the game. We don't need more journalism where newsrooms just cheerlead those who play by the rules of the game. We need deep, critical, investigative journalism that challenges the rules of the game itself. And in this case, the game is based on magical thinking, the idea that we can have infinite economic growth on a finite planet. So, at that time, when the UN plastic treaty failed, I canvassed a few of the big suppliers and manufacturers whose products are either made of single-use plastics or packaged in them. I also approached some of the retailers who stock these brands. And I wanted to ask them what their corporate policies are regarding single-use plastics. In terms of the contribution to adding new plastic into the value chain and marketing so that we consume more, how does this square with the fact that we really need to turn off the tap on plastics pollution? What do you think happened? The reputation managers, because that's what the communication gatekeepers call themselves these days, they either ignored my emails and phone calls, or else they deftly sidestepped them. Some sent through a few responses that were very carefully curated, but so thin as to say nothing at all, but look fabulous. It seems to me that these corporations are quite happy to spend a king's ransom on wooing us as consumers with these seductive marketing campaigns. But when it comes to engaging with us as citizens through the far more important democratic pillar that is accountability-driven journalism, they are very quiet. Either they don't really care about the issue, or else they're trying to ghost it to hope that the story will just die. Either way, it's clear that the people running these corporations don't seem to realize that we're all in this together. We're all breathing the same air. One final cautionary tale. Marie Curie. She gave herself a lethal dose of radiation because she carried in her lab coat the very elements whose discovery bagged her 2 Nobels, one for chemistry and one for physics, because science at the time didn't realize that radiation can curdle our genes and give us a nasty little tumor or two. Like Marie Curie, we are carrying with us poisons that we barely understand. So, here we are, stuck in the smoker's lounge of plastics pollution. The air is thick, it's toxic, and yet none of us can leave, not even our kids. There is no outside to go to. So let's come back to the one question that brings us here today. What is a lethal dose of plastics poisoning? We don't know, but we will do soon enough.